Welcome to Colorado State University's podcast, The Audit, where host Stacy Nick talks with CSU faculty about topics ranging from their latest research to current events.
A lie travels halfway around the world before the truth can even get its shoes on. That quote feels almost quaint in the age of artificial intelligence, where misinformation and disinformation can circle the globe in seconds, long before facts even know they've left the building. Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming the way we interact with information, but its growing influence raises critical questions about its impact on democracy. From the rapid spread of misinformation to the rise of deepfake technology, AI is reshaping the way we process and trust information. Today, I'm joined by CSU Associate Professor Hamed Qahri-Saremi, a computer information systems researcher whose work explores the intersection of AI, online social platforms, and human behavior. We'll discuss the benefits of this powerful tool, as well as how it may be impacting democratic processes, eroding public trust in institutions, and influencing one of the most human elements of all, our sense of empathy. Your research looks at our interactions with online social platforms and artificial intelligence systems. That's your big focus. There's a lot of concern regarding AI's potential influence, particularly through misinformation, which you also study. What are the biggest concerns regarding AI's impact today, and how might we already be seeing these challenges play out?
With respect to the misinformation or disinformation, there are positive and negative sides to AI, the application of AI and the consequences of AI in that space. On the positive side, what we are seeing recently started on X, formerly Twitter, a few years back, and in 2025, Meta implemented they are moving away from third-party fact-checkers toward more of a user-oriented or user-centered approach to identifying or managing the misinformation content, which is in form of community notes. And also AI can really help identifying the falsehood misinformation content more than anything else. There are research on how we can use lateral readings or presentation of the facts using AI to the user while their users are engaging with the claims and information on social media, and help them identify the elements of falsehood in the claim and information. So these are really positives. These are things that you need really power of a tool like AI to make it happen. At the same time, the AI itself is at the center of a concern with respect to generation of misinformation and disinformation on social media. AI is designed to generate human-like content. So the more they advance, the better they can generate human-like information, which makes the misinformation, disinformation harder to detect. And even experts have challenges identifying those. So there are positives and negatives. Definitely there are significant concerns, but also there are significant potentials.
As you mentioned, AI has become very human-like in ways that are very hard to discern, but that's also the problem. It's also becoming deeply embedded in our culture. This past weekend, Super Bowl was filled with ads for AI tech, as well as ads using AI to create completely realistic. The Jurassic Park commercial was, it could have been right out of the movie. That's all in fun, but as AI technology continues to evolve, and as we see more things like deep fakes, where it's nearly impossible to tell what's real and what's not, what potential impacts could we see in the future?
On democratic processes, I can think of three ways that AI can influence. One is definitely in the area of disinformation and misinformation. So prior to this AI tools, the generation of AI tools, which has started really in 2022, 2021, we already had concerns with respect to misinformation, disinformation, especially the conspiracy theories influencing democratic process, elections in the U.S. You can think of Pizzagate. These are things that at the center of it, you had some bad actors like QAnon creating this content. Now, AI, as you mentioned, given the capability that it can create more and more human-like content, which is really more difficult to identify whether it is AI-generated or it's human-generated, it can take these to next level, and it has already done that. One big concern with respect to generation of misinformation using AI and how hard it could be, even for experts, let alone the ordinary citizens, to detect this. Also, it's not just that the information is human, like the misinformation can be generated in very convincing manners. The research on conspiracy theories shows that usually the more effective misinformation claims are the claims that have elements of truth in it and then elements of falsehoods. AI can very well be used in order to generate such contents that are very convincing, therefore more difficult for ordinary citizens to identify it. Another area of concern might be the issue with respect to the foreign influence, the adversaries and countries that can influence the democratic processes. Again, this is a pattern that we already were seeing for several years now on social media platforms in particular, where you have the conversational bots that are generated. They're in form of a campaign. These are really disinformation campaigns that are run by adversary countries. I mean, there are examples of such campaigns run by Russia, by China, to influence the elections or democratic processes, or at least manipulate the citizens' opinions using the bots that run some sort of a conversation, influence the conversation on social media. Now, we have already seen that generative AI is being used by these parties, by these countries, in order to create AI bots that are now even more difficult to identify that these are bots. These are not users. They create very realistic personas, accounts. With AI, we're already seeing these patterns, and moving forward is going to probably get even worse as AI advances and becomes more even difficult to tell whether it is bot or it is human.
With AI making it easier, as you said, to generate misinformation and disinformation, how do you think that affects public trust in traditionally reliable institutions? And I'm thinking even journalism. Like, it used to be the last bastion of truth, and now even that has become hard. It's hard to know. Even the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, even those media outlets are having trouble with this now.
Some of it goes beyond just the AI. It's the issue with the misinformation and how should we deal with the misinformation. How can we empower, enable the user to not fall for the misinformation? And when you look at the literature, there are a variety of different techniques that have been used, starting from filtering and censoring the misinformation to labeling them and trying to make it clear for the user that this is false. We had that quite a bit during COVID time when we had misinformation around COVID, and then labelings that the Twitter at the time used. And not many of these techniques have proven to be effective. So censoring and filtering it actually may create concerns with respect to freedom of expression. So it's interpreted differently by the users. Labeling them, there are research showing that the users do not like to be told what to believe, what not to believe. And many users may even know that the information they are dealing with may not be 100% true, or at least they are not sure about is truthfulness, but they still choose to share it. Not that because they are bad actors, because there are other reasons for sharing it, because they want others to just see that perspective maybe, because it's an interesting angle to a topic for them. And that's essentially the forefront of research is still on misinformation, that how can you enable the users to empower them and sort of at the collective level reduce the propagation of the falsehood and misinformation. Now, when we bring AI into it, so it gets more complicated, as we mentioned, because this content is harder to detect. When it comes to trust in institutions, I mean, that's a bigger conversation, that why the users, and you can think of why the users have lost trust in institutions or news agencies and so on. But one thing that is important is these institutions be careful not to fall for the falsehoods using AI. I mean, we have seen examples of AI hallucinations finding its way into the articles published by some of these agencies or mentioned by some of their experts in some of their panels and so on. And that shows you two things. One, when the expert and the news agency, that their job is really determining the veracity of information, falls for a falsehood that is generated by AI, that shows you how complex the situation is, number one. Number two, that can really damage the trust in these institutions. And there are other elements. I don't think it's just the AI. I mean, the political environment can influence it. The polarization definitely has a lot of influence, probably even more than AI. It's just how the polarization is playing out and where the users, the citizens, see that institution in terms of political spectrum. And that's a whole different discussion, that how we can sort of reduce it. The AI Unfortunately, so far, I think it's increasing that polarization because of its effectiveness in generation of misinformation.
How do these nuances challenge our ability to detect misinformation and disinformation?
For the ordinary user, that's a main challenge. You can look at it from different perspectives. We have the whole conversation and theory in psychology about the dual process theories that we make a lot of our decisions based on information cues without engaging in systematic, thoughtful, deep processing of the full content, mainly because we cannot afford deep processing of every single content that we encounter in our daily lives. When you include elements of truth, and those are usually very obvious truth or the truths over the topics that are important, you can imagine that and for an ordinary citizen that may not have much of a information literacy in terms of how to assess such a claim, identifying those elements of truth in a claim in an article might be enough to persuade them that this is a credible piece of information. And that makes it very difficult because many of those new content that are presented, the falsehood, are new for the user. It's difficult for the user to assess it. But then the elements of truth are the things that users probably have seen before. And therefore, those become the information cues that the user most likely put their decision-making based on.
We've talked a lot about the negative influences, but maybe what are some of the positive impacts that AI could have on democratic systems and governance?
AI can definitely facilitate faster, more effective identification of misinformation. And it's really the pace and effectiveness at which this AI-generated misinformation is being produced. It requires an AI tool to help us identify them. If you consider the broader democratic processes, with respect to the security and reliability of the elections, for example, AI tools can be used to better faster identify the anomalies that happens in elections. So therefore, maybe increase the trust, the people trust, the citizens trust to the election processes and secure elections. AI can improve the government's responsiveness to the citizens' need, whether it is just a response to a citizen or identifying the needs of the citizen based on their communication that comes in from citizens. Before AI, dealing with that load and volume of data, many of them are unstructured data, there are messages that comes in, and identifying, summarizing them, identifying patterns in them and so on would have been very difficult. Now I think AI tools present those opportunities for the government to be more responsive, faster in their response, maybe more efficient, responding to the citizens' need. And also, it can help with better decision-making, I believe, at the government level. For example, Congress. Many of the policies and laws that Congress considers, I think that one big question is about the consequences of these laws, the consequences of these policies, making better decisions using the data that is available, or maybe simulating some of those potential consequences. Now, AI can potentially help lawmakers at least identify some of the main consequences that they can expect from the laws, therefore improve the decision-making with respect to the laws that are passed.
You're currently also researching AI's impact on human empathy. How do those two things intersect?
That's ongoing research that I'm working on. And what we have identified is that we are looking at the morally sensitive decisions, the decisions that you can end up discriminating against certain people. The decision itself, in terms of the rationality of a decision, might appear to be rational, but it's still discrimination. For example, if you rely on assumed or presumed limitations of a certain group of people, in order to consider them for a specific job, despite the fact that they might otherwise look qualified. And in there, we are testing whether, because one thing we know about is AI cannot process emotions. It definitely expresses emotions, but these are just expressions. These are words. There's no meaning in the sense of experiencing of the emotions behind it on the AI side. Our argument was, given that one thing that AI is really good at is to change the tone and framing of the conversation, how the same output can be presented in many different ways. One of the common applications of this conversational AI, like ChatGPT or etc., is just to have your email written a little bit better, change the tone, make it more concise, make it informal, etc. These are really AI communicating the same message using many different framings. So what we look at was that if in a scenario where the AI is recommending an immoral decision, a decision that is clearly discriminating against a certain group of people, if that message is presented using emotional language, a language that is more empathetic versus not, how does that affect the user's reaction to it? And the initial findings shows that once you essentially use this empathetic language and AI just expressing empathy, but is still recommending a discrimination, the users become a little bit numb to that discrimination and accept the decision much more than when it is not expressed in empathy. In fact, when there is no empathy, the people are pretty averse to the decision. But when we introduce the empathetic sort of language, many of the users, well, significantly more number of users accept the decision. And then we tested a few of the tools around AI, how you can improve the explanation, so explanation of the logic underlying it and so on. And one thing we found was that the empathetic tone is strong enough that is effective regardless whether the AI is explainable, it's not explainable, etc. Still, you can present, an AI can recommend a discriminating recommendation in a language that the users will accept it. And overall, that's a little bit concerning. That is the strength of these tools, that they can change the tone very effectively. But at the same time, we as the users, we have a weakness there, that once an emotional language or a compassionate language is used, we lose the sight of the fact that the recommendation at the core of it is still the same recommendation. It's still recommending for discrimination.
That's terrifying that can have that kind of influence to where you might not even realize you're being influenced.
For us, one way we are thinking about it is the role of the language. Language is such a central role for us as humans. Our consciousness is directly linked to the power of language. We really create the concepts, create things in language. But for us, language is the composition, the expression of an experience of the processing that happens. That's the meaning we give to the language. So if somebody expresses empathy, humans see that as a person really experiencing that empathy. Therefore, they are expressing it in the language. When it comes to AI, that becomes a very important distinction that I think that's part of the whole AI literacy that the user should be educated in, is that this connection does not necessarily exist, especially when it comes to emotional, empathetic conversation or even moral conversation, ethical conversation. It's not that AI necessarily by nature has any moral standards or ethical standards, but they can very well speak to it. They use the language around it. So I think the meaning of the language when it comes to AI, the meaning that we as humans give to the language when it comes to AI is different. And that's an important distinction that should be made.
So we have so much information coming at us in general. We're expected to analyze a lot of information very quickly. We're drinking from the fire hose. How can we address the limitation that we have in discerning what's real and what's not?
There are different things that can be considered. One thing I can think of is the whole issue around AI literacy, to educate the user. And that's really at the core of our mission as an educational institution, to educate our students and generally the community around what AI is, what are the potentials of the AI, and at the same time, how they can and should use AI to their benefits and also avoiding the risks associated with them. One challenge for all of us are using it, but how much AI literacy do we have? I think it's bare minimum. Even the experts are not necessarily have AI literacy. They're familiar with AI algorithms. That's definitely a big area to focus on, especially for an educational institution.
What steps should society take to address AI's influence as far as laws, regulations? What kind of policies? What can we do in a larger role?
One of the areas that I think are proving effective is watermarking the AI content, the policies, laws that require the AI content generators or platforms to watermark the AI content to help the users understand which content is coming from AI is AI generated or AI has been used in its generation and which content is not. The EU has an AI policy that requires identification of the AI content on platforms. California has a bill that is being supported by the tech companies, many of the AI companies, including OpenAI, that essentially requires watermarking the AI content for the users so that at least the users understand the source of the content and then maybe help the users to treat the content based on hopefully different criteria. Social media has played a huge role in increasing the overload of information that we face every day. It becomes very difficult to identify what is what, which one's coming from AI, how much AI is used. The users can be empowered and should not be left on their own.
It's amazing how it's so powerful for good and maybe for not so good.
Yes, I mean, I like one interpretation of technology. I think it was Mark Zuckerberg, if I'm not mistaken, that said it once in the context of social media, that these are amplifiers. Technology just reinforces things. So you have good and bad, and now AI can make the good much, much better and stronger and can make the bad really terrible. We had conspiracy theories, we had misinformation, we had disinformation prior to this era of AI, but AI has shown the potential to make it much worse. But at the same time, AI provides a lot of potential. And that's a paradox of technology. For me as a technology scholar, it makes it very interesting that it's not just positives, it's not just negatives. It's always a paradoxical phenomena. And as a researcher, I think our focus are on improving the benefits and either restricting the negatives or help the users at least avoid the negatives as much as possible.
That was CSU Associate Professor Hamed Qahri-Saremi speaking about the potential influence of artificial intelligence technology on democracy. I'm your host, Stacey Nick, and you're listening to CSU's The Audit.